Great. So we are still in the midst of a deep dive into chapters 38, 39, and 40. And we've been talking a lot about kavana. And we've been talking about what kavana means here in the context of what the Alter Rebbe is talking about. Kavana, usually when you talk about it, it's about intention. Here, the Alter Rebbe is saying it's not just intention, it's about how you are engaging in your service of Hashem. Of course, intention falls under that grander and bigger umbrella category. But what the Alter Rebbe here is mainly talking about is what is your passion level? How much passion are you infusing in your mitzvahs, in your performance of your avodah to God? And the amount of passion that you can invest is actually based on what kind of soul you have and where your soul stems from. And that's basically the extent to which you can engage with that passion. And just to remind you, what is that passion? That passion is supposed to be Ava and Yira. Ava is the desire to connect, and Yira is the fear of being disconnected. So, how much of that is infusing your everyday life and how you serve God? And specifically when you're engaging with Torah and mitzvahs. So last week we were speaking about the beginning of the four categories. There are four different categories of a person or a soul level that a person can be coming from. We spoke about the first one. The first level is this soul that comes from the world of Asiya, which this soul is a very sincere soul. This soul has this ability just to know that there is God and know that he or she wants to serve God. It doesn't come from an intellectual place or an emotional place. It just is. So this kind of person is not necessarily a deep thinker, but just has this intuition of, let me serve God. This person often ends up being a much more Kabbalah's ol kind of person, so a more accepting person. That's the theme throughout their service. There's a lot of just acceptance. I know that this is right, and Hashem told this to me, and Hashem has given me the Torah and mitzvahs, and I want to serve Him from that space. And there's something really, really beautiful about that, and in ways has an incredible advantage over the other types of service as well. The simplicity and the sincerity is beautiful, and we know how much Chassidus and the Baal Shem Tov specifically stressed how a sincere person or a simple person has access to parts of to literally has Hashem's ear sometimes more than a tzaddik himself. The sophistication sometimes works against us, and the simplicity of a poor, sincere person, at the time of the Baal Shem Tov, sometimes weighed to him more than an educated and knowledgeable Torah scholar. And so I don't want to, just because this is maybe the lowest level of spheres, which probably a lot of us fit into that category. That's not to say that this category is not real and raw and beautiful and is truly engaging, authentically and genuinely engaging in their service of God. So that's the first category, category number one, this of the four categories of passion, of kavana towards the Eibishter and our service of the Eibishter. The second category we spoke about last week was one whose soul comes from the realm of Yetzirah, which is the world of emotions. And that means that their service of God is defined by their emotions, but then we defines that a little bit more and help to understand that, yes, it's defined by their emotions, but their emotions are defined by their nature. And we spoke a lot about this last week, and I'm going to do a little bit more of a review this week because category number 3 kind of depends on category number 2 for it in its understanding. Okay, so category number 2, based on their emotions, right? It's coming from the world of Yetzirah, which is the world of formation and emotion. And therefore, this soul is a little bit more sophisticated than the previous category. The previous category was not really engaging itself. It's just I know, a deep knowing, a sincerity, a just simplicity in its connection. And here we got a little more sophisticated where there's an engagement of emotion here, where I feel something. I feel like serving Hashem. I'm engaging with who I am and what it feels like to serve God, right? So some examples would be let's say, a person who naturally has within their nature to be more reserved, let's say, or to be more studious, or to not be as social, right? Let's say, let's just group together all those three different characteristics. So that person has a very good chance of becoming scholarly in Torah and therefore engage in learning every single day. Yes, so he's engaging in Limud Torah, which is a mitzvah. This is a good thing. He's studying the Torah every single day. And at the same time, he's doing it from the space of his soul coming from the world of emotion. He feels like it. He enjoys that. He wants it. It fits with his nature and his personality and all of his character traits. And so he engages with it. This is good, right? This is a good thing. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. This is a great thing. He's engaging, he's using who he is, his personality, the way he has been stamped as a person, like we spoke about last week. He's using that to serve God, right? So another example would be someone who is naturally more gregarious and outgoing and loves to talk to people, is super social. So that personality would be very fit to doing some shluchas, right? So doing outreach. So speaking to people who have not yet heard about the Torah, people who don't know about mitzvahs, he engages with them, he speaks with them. She wants to teach them because she's outgoing and loves to talk to people and loves to connect. So she's using her nature to serve God. That's her coming from the space of the world of Yetzirah, where she has this soul which is engaging its emotions and is able to serve God from her nature. This is clear so far? Now, what does happen is, imagine a person who's trying to serve God. So you have this your predisposition, right? That stamp that we were talking about, that teva, like the word matbea, which is a stamp. You have that stamped nature, that predisposed, unique character trait. And it will help you in certain types of service towards God, right? So for the person who's good at outreach, he's outgoing, he loves talking to people, loves connecting. That comes easily and smoothly to him. And then there's the other parts of religion, like maybe like tefillah, like davening, where you're quiet and things have to be just internal and it's you communicating with God. That might not come as easily, right? So he still engages with it, but it's a struggle, okay? What's important to remember, and this we spoke about last week, is the world of Yetzirah, or the soul that comes from that world, is called similar to a chaya, an animal, or a malach. Malachim are also called chayes. Now, you would think, like, why would an angel be called an animal? That feels very different, right? We know animals, we know angels, they don't seem alike. And at the same time, Chassidus explains that malachim are very much like animals and very much like this soul. Why is that? Because an angel, it has very much a predisposition. And it's given this one character trait or this one purpose or this one service towards God. And that's how it serves. It doesn't go outside of that service. All it can do is serve within its nature, just like an animal which has an instinct and it doesn't have other instincts. It just has its own, and that's how it serves God, as opposed to a human, which is higher than a malach, higher than an animal, which has the full gamut of emotions, right? The whole point here is that we're going to be engaging with passion in serving the Eibishter, Ava, Yira, more than just what has been predisposed. A human being has been given everything. Adam, a human being, comes from the whole word Adam is because we were created in Hashem's likeness, which means we were created with so much more potential than what we maybe are attuned to. We have the whole gamut of human emotions available to us. And then on top of that is stamped your specific personality, your character traits, the way you express yourself, which is a limitation. And the way Rabbi Baltiel gives this example, we spoke about again this last week, it's similar to an animal that has an exoskeleton, right? So there are animals that have endoskeletons and there are animals that have exoskeletons. Endoskeletons are like human beings. We have skeletons on the inside. Animals are like that. Birds are like that. I don't know, fish, mammals, amphibians, reptiles, all of them. have endoskeletons. You can't see the hardness that is a part of their being, as opposed to exoskeletons, which are like spiders, crabs, crustaceans, insects, all have this exoskeleton. What is it? They have this hard exterior. And there's advantages to that, right? So the fact that they have this hard exterior makes them a little bit more impenetrable, right? It's hard on the outside. It's protecting what's on the inside, as opposed to a human being who's fleshy on the outside and is pretty vulnerable on the outside. But the exoskeleton of an animal is a limitation to him. Certain crabs and spiders, they all experience a shedding. What's it called? The word for it is they shed, but there's a specific word for it. It will come to me. So what happens is at a certain point, they outgrow their shell. Their shell is not growing with them, not like our nails grow. Their shells don't expand. It's limited. It's their stamp. And at a certain point, they have to shed their exterior and adopt a new one or develop a new one. Okay, so imagine like, I don't know, a snake, or how, well, you see snake skins, that's easier. But imagine, let's say, a spider who sheds its skin, and then it's pretty soft now. Its new exterior is pretty soft now, but it's like a new shoe size. Imagine like a shoe. Your shoes don't expand like clothes do. Sometimes you could stretch your clothes, like gain some weight, lose some weight. Those things can like move with you a little bit. There's expansion, as opposed to a shoe. If you outgrow a shoe, it's done. That exterior is done. You have to throw away or give away that shoe and now get a bigger size. So in the same way, that's what this exoskeleton is like. This whole example is in order to illustrate what we as human beings were given to help us express ourselves. It is a limitation. It's an exoskeleton, right? So that personality that you have that feels so much like a part of you and in ways is so endearing to you, and you love that part of your personality, that's great. And it also is at the same time a limitation. You are so much more than the way that you express yourself. You are so much more than being kind or being strict, disciplined, or being studious, or being outgoing, right? You are so much more than that. But the way we express ourselves are usually through our personality. So here we're coming to category number 3, which is the human, which is the part of the neshama that comes from the realm of, we're in the realm of Bria. So it's a more creative world. And now you're actually tapping into the human part of yourself, as opposed to the stamp, as opposed to the limited part of yourself. So here we have people who here the Alter Rebbe is referring to as tzaddikim, who are able to go beyond their nature. And there's actually 2 different ways of going beyond their nature that we're going to talk about. But this shattering of the exoskeleton is literally like what they're physically doing, and in all realms doing, is they're shattering teva, nature, and they're converting to elokus. It's like this transition over from, this is my nature, this is what is natural to me, and I'm going to convert to something so much more, to something godly, to really live up to my name of Adam, which is a person, a human who's created in the image of God. So what does that look like? So Chassidus talks a lot about this, and there's 2 subtle differences in the way that you can do this, okay? All in the category of personality number 3. So how can you do this? One is called Lishanais Midaisav Hativiyim, which means to change your natural emotions, okay? And this one's going to sound very similar, but it's subtly different. Lishanat Teva Midaisav, to change the nature of your emotions, okay? So we'll say it again. One is to change your natural emotions, and the other is to change the nature of your emotions. Okay, and an example of this would be, let's say, my teva, my nature, my predisposition is to enjoy studying. I love coming to a good Torah class. I love engaging my mind. The intellectual aspect is so invigorating. This is something I enjoy, right? But I'm also very private, and it makes me more reserved. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my nature. right? So this is the first category. Change my natural emotions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be super outgoing now. I'm going to decide to teach Torah classes every single day. I'm going to greet every single person with a smile. I'm going to change my more reserved, introspective, inverted personality, and I'm going to change it outward. I'm going to turn it on its head, right? Completely topsy-turvy. That would be category number 3, changing my natural emotions, turning them upside down. This fits into personality number 3. What am I doing? I'm changing myself. I'm taking my stamp and I'm saying, that stamp, that's not me. I have so much more to me. And I'm going to engage and I'm going to explore other parts of myself and work against my nature. That's the first category in personality number 3. The second category is changing the nature of your emotions. What does that mean? I'm going to say, okay, so I'm, let's say, naturally kind. Good. Continue being naturally kind, but do it in a way that that kindness is for Hashem, not just because you're a liberal at heart. You just want to save every single person. It's because you want to save every single person for Hashem, right? I'm changing the nature of my emotions. I'm taking that emotion and I'm changing a little bit of it. So either I'm making myself even more kind, stretching myself to be even kinder, or I'm putting a limitation on the kindness and saying, now's not the time for you to be kind. Don't change your kindness. Your kindness is good, but I'm gonna reel it in a little bit. So what I'm doing is I'm changing the nature of it. I'm not changing it entirely. That would be the second category of it, and both of those are very high high reaches. Like those are really difficult things to be doing. I don't know if you've ever engaged with that or if you've met someone who's engaged with that, but changing your personality is a constant, right? If Hashem gave you that teva, then it's set. So if you're going to be engaging with trying to change that teva, that's very hard to do. It's very hard to come to a point where you absolutely transform your nature to be something entirely different, right? So this is the category that we're talking about. We're talking about someone who is really engaging with turning themselves around all the time. And on 2 levels. On the one hand, they're turning it around because they don't like the way it's serving them, right? So I don't like that I'm so reserved. I'm going to turn that around. I'm going to be super outgoing. I'm going to change myself as a person. And then the other level is, no, it's a good thing that I'm reserved. And it's a good thing that I'm able to sit and study for a very long time period, or if I have this more serious personality. But now I want to make sure that that serious personality, when I'm using it, I'm not just using it for Hashem, but it's because of Hashem. Hashem wants it this way. Or if I'm going to be serious and reserved, I'm going to do it, I'm going to either limit it or I'm going to make it even greater. I'm playing around with the nature of it. I'm not just doing it by rote. I'm not just doing it because that's what naturally flows out of me. I'm doing it from a very conscious place where I'm giving the directives towards my nature. Does that make sense? Beautiful. So there's the going against your nature, and then there's the refining of your nature. That's how we would put those 2 categories. And a few stories is just a really interesting story that is connected to this concept of going against your nature / refining your nature. So the story is that the Alter Rebbe was a disciple of the Maggid Mizrich. And when the Alter Rebbe joined the Maggid, he was given the Maggid's son, Rav Avram the Malach, as a study partner. So they spent a lot of time together, and in this story, they're traveling together. And this is how the story goes. It was either Rav Avram the Malach who told the wagon driver to do this. I think that's the way the story is. I think that's how it happened. That Rav Avram the Malach said to the wagon driver, whip the horse, maybe not whip, prod, encourage the horse to move until he remembers he's a horse. Okay, so like there's one category. Whip him until he stops being an animal, and whip until he remembers that he's an animal. Okay, and it was in Yiddish, obviously. So whip him until he stops being a horse. And the other category was whip him until he remembers that he's a horse. He said both. And the Alter Rebbe literally stopped the wagon and said, now I learned 2 new ways of Avodas Hashem, and I need to go back to the Maggid to spend a few months to implement these 2 new ways of servicing Hashem. What is it? It's exactly what we're talking about. Whip him until he stops being an animal. What does it mean? That he should he should stop whatever it is for a horse. He took that line and he applied that to himself. I need to work on myself until I work away from those character traits that make me an animal. I'm going to stop being an animal. I'm going to overcome that instinct or that malach tendency of that stamped personality, and I'm going to go above that. Change that personality trait completely, go against my nature, and that's how I'm going to service God. And the other phrase that Rav Abraham Malach said is that until he remembers that he's a horse, he said, see those personality traits, see that nature, work within those the natures that I have, the personality that I have, but just refine it. Make it godly, make it in service of Hashem. Go beyond what it just is naturally and make it a service of God that has more intention, is more conscious, and has direction. And this category is really an expression of free will, right? Because you could hear in the other category where there's the Kabbalah Sa'al, where it's just sincerity, simplicity. Hashem tells me what to do, I listen. The next category, which was a little bit more engagement of the humanness of yourself, but at the same time, it's not going beyond nature. So it's just within your natural tendencies. So it's not really like I am choosing. It's rather just I'm flowing with my personality, and my personality is dictating things as opposed to me, the real me, who is dictating. And in this third personality, where you're going against your nature or you're refining your nature and you're going beyond, that's where you really start hearing the free will, the bechira, where someone's choosing to go beyond what they've been given and access something so much more than just what is just flowing for them or what is just happening in their world. Okay? So that's the superiority of human over the animal or the malach. And that's another level that our souls can access, can dip into. But this is also considered the level of a tzaddik. Someone who really engages with it is the level of a tzaddik. And then the last level, category number 4, and I'm sure you're thinking like, what could be the last level after this? What could be beyond this? Is something that the Alter Rebbe calls tzaddikim gedolim, like big tzaddikim. It's funny, like Noach was a big tzaddik. So, I mean, we're talking about big tzaddikim here. And this is a level that is not applicable to any of us, because this is the level that the Alter Rebbe calls merkava, a chariot. What is a chariot? A chariot is a structure, right? A structure on wheels that is led by the rider and the horses. It doesn't move of its own accord. It's not like a car. Well, a car is also like that. It doesn't move of its own accord. It's unless there's a driver and unless there's ignition, there's gas in it. It's not going to just move unless there's gravity involved. But the idea is, what is a merkava? A merkava is complete bittul to Hashem. Absolute surrender, no action taken other than in service of God. So we're talking about a person who, it's not just when he's trying to do a mitzvah that he's a merkava, he's a complete chariot, he's a completely channel for godliness. We're talking about with any single thing that he does, it is because God has dictated for him to do so, and that's why it's happening. Every single action. So an example of this is the Alter Rebbe talking about the Maggid Mizrich. He said the Maggid Mizrich did not move a muscle unless Hashem dictated to him to do so. What's he trying to express? He's saying that every single time, every movement of the Maggid was in service of God, was completely attuned to, completely connected to, and he now has become a vessel of God. Now he is completely of service to God. Every action of his, every part of his very being is an expression of God. To better understand this concept, okay, and I think this is really important, it helps to understand the difference between Tuma and Tahara and Kedusha. So what is impure and pure, and what is holy, right? Think about what is purity. What is the opposite of purity? Impurity, right? So you have a bottle of oil and a little bit of sediment gets into it. Now the bottle is impure. It's not pure olive oil, or it's not pure whatever that exact whatever it is, water, oil. Those are good examples because you could actually see something that's making it less pure. You could see the extraneous thing that's making it what it's not. But when something is pure, it's completely unto itself, right? And all impure means is that something else was introduced to it. When you talk about kadosh, you talk about holy. What is the opposite of holy? Something that is not holy, right? What is something that is not holy? It doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that it's not holy. When we talk about kadosh in the Jewish language, kadesh actually means something that is set aside, something that's put aside. It's sanctified, right? So you see this even with halacha. If there was an animal that was intentionally with the kavana was intended to be a karban, that is now a holy animal. That animal is set aside. It's considered kadosh. Why? It's set aside. It has an intention now on it that it will later be used as a karban. That's really important. Why is that important? Because when we talk about this category number 4 person, we have to understand that this person who we're terming as a merkava is considered kadosh. What's important about that? It is sanctified. It's ordained. It comes from Hashem. It's an inspired thing. It's a whole different category. It's a different sphere. And that kedusha can only be given over to it by God himself. That holiness, that separation from everybody else happens because of God. And a few examples of this would be, like, let's say, Moshe Rabbeinu, of course, holiest of men. But an interesting distinction that comes, we had this a few parshias ago, where Miriam spoke Lashon Hara about Moshe Rabbeinu, and she says, why is Moshe Rabbeinu, she says to Aaron, her brother, why is Moshe separating himself from his wife? We also get nevuah, right? I'm a prophetess, you're a prophet, he's a prophet too. Why is he separating himself from his wife? She didn't realize, and Hashem later explained to her, that Moshe was another level of Kedusha, a higher prophet, a different prophet, which means that sometimes he had to be separate from his wife. Why? It's another level of holiness that God was granting him, a different level of Kedusha, of Nevuah, that she wasn't interacting with. She thought that Moshe was the same as them. We're all Nevi'im. Not so. Moshe Rabbeinu had been sanctified, was given a higher level of Nevuah, the greatest of all men, and that required him to sometimes separate himself. So we see Kedusha is about being sanctified by God, elevated to an entirely different sphere. Another example of this, and this example brings out an added element here that the Alter Rebbe is bringing out with the concept of Merkava, is Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef and his brothers were all tzaddikim. They were all special. But the brothers couldn't understand certain aspects of Yosef. They looked at how he engaged with the world and they thought, this is strange, right? Like, for example, him having dreams and him having dreams of being a melech, a king, his ability, his beauty, him taking care of his beauty and taking care of himself. There were parts of Yosef that were unrelatable to them. Why couldn't they understand? Because they couldn't understand that Yosef HaTzadik was a merkava. When he was, taking care of his beard, or when he was being a king instead of the shepherds like they were, that wasn't something that was wrong with him. That was him engaging with God on a totally different sphere than they could quite comprehend. I'll give you a story that will illustrate this, that might help you understand this a little bit better. There's a story, again, about the Maggid of Mizrach, who, I think we said the story once, but on Erev Shabbos, wanted to take a nap. There's an inyan in the Arizal to nap on Erev Shabbos, right? So Friday afternoon. And the Maggid is lying down to sleep, and he can't sleep because there's too much of a heavenly disturbance, right? This is all very much in the realm of holiness. There's a heavenly disturbance and he can't fall asleep. Why can't he fall asleep? Because Rav Aaron Kerliner, in a shul, next door down the block, is singing Shir Hashirim, which was his minhag. Some people say Shir Hashirim, Erev Shabbos. And he's saying Shir Hashirim, and it's creating like this heavenly chaos. And the Maggid can't sleep. So he sends a student to go tell Rav Aaron Kerliner to stop saying Shir Hashirim so he can sleep. Right? So just like so many incredible aspects of this story, right? First of all, Rav Aaron Kerliner's Shir Hashirim is creating so much heavenly disturbances in the best of ways. And then for the student to be sent to be told that you should stop so that the Rebbe can nap. Right? So the conclusion of the story is obviously that the Maggid's nap was more important to happen than Rav Aaron Kerliner's Shir Hashirim. And that's very hard to understand. What does that mean? His nap, a simple physical act, was more holy, was more necessary, was going to cause greater service of God than this Shir Hashirim? And the answer is yes. Because when someone is kadesh, when someone is holy, every movement, every single breath that they take is in complete service of God. They're in a category of absolute connection with Hashem that is not quite understandable to us, to the rest of us. And so, yes, the Magen Mizrich's nap was more important to experience than the Rav Aaron Kerliner's Shir Hashirim. Rabbi Paltiel shares how when people refer to the Rebbe, they would say Kavod Kedushas, his honor, his holiness. And people don't necessarily think about what those words mean, right? Why do we refer to a Rebbe or to a tzaddik with those terms? His honor, his holiness. It's because someone like that, it's not just that he's smarter than me. He's worked harder on his midas than me. He knows more Torah than I do. That's not what he is. He's on a different sphere. He's on a whole nother level. When we talk about someone as kadesh, it means that he's set aside. He's sanctified. He's beyond. And it's something that we could look at and we could try to connect to and we could try to emulate. But it's, again, something that's ordained by Hashem. It's a gift. It's inspiration from God. It's something given as a gift to God. That being said, there are still these 4 categories, right? And there's still the opportunity to look at every single one of these 4 categories and say, how could I make this practical in my everyday life? How could I make maybe a part of my service of God more sincere, more simplistic, less complicated? Or, second category, maybe I could engage a little bit more. Maybe I could look at my tiviyim, my nature, and say, is there a part of my teva, my nature, that I could use in service of God? Yeah, I'm a nice person. So if I'm a nice person, let me do a nice thing, that has to do with Torah and mitzvahs, right? Saving cats off the street corner is a good thing too. I fully support. But let me see if my neighbor needs, eggs or needs a kind word or needs a smile. Let me see what my nature is and let me use it to serve God. That is a wonderful service. That's incredible. That would be engaging all of me. Like David Melech says, Kolatz Maisai Tarmarna, that all of my bones, my entirety should utter about Hashem, Mika Mecha, right? Who is like you, Hashem? So David Melech there, Chassidus explains about what David Melech saying in Tehillim. I think it's in chapter 35, 34. What is David Melech saying? He's saying, I want all of me, my whole physical body, my entirety, everything that's human about me. I want it to serve God. I want every finger, fingernail, toe, hair on my head. I want it all to feel like it's in service of Hashem and saying, who is like you, Hashem? So when I look at my nature, my personality, my fixed part of myself, my limitation, and say, hey, this is what I was born with, that's good. I want to use that in service of Hashem. That is tremendous. That's saying, Kolatz Maisai Tamarna. It's looking at me, who I am, my humanness, and it's converting it to serve God. The next level would be to be introspective and honest and say, what are the parts of myself that are natural to me, and how could I change them around? How could I work against them? turn them over. So if I am outgoing, how could I be more introspective? If I'm very reserved, how could I be more outgoing? If I don't know, what are better examples? If I am more disciplinarian, how could I be more kind? If I'm the free flow, everything should go, I'm easy, I'm generous, how could I be a little bit more disciplined and more structured in my day or in my service of God or in how I interact with people? If I'm a person who is like, who endures, right? So the midah of netzach, I'm like always enduring, and that's one of my character traits. Good. How could I turn that over instead to surrender to Hashem? That I don't have to be the one to fight all the time. I could let Hashem take control, and I could surrender to His will and what He wants, and experience the humility of that. If I think a certain way, right? Like my I'm predisposed to a negative way of thinking. How can I make it more positive? And if I'm always thinking the cup is always half full, the cup is always half full, how could I be a little bit more realistic about life and down to earth? Right? So those are breaking my teva, going against my natural resources. And then there's also the shifting the teva to serve God, to refine the teva a little bit more. So if I am someone who exhibits the midah of netzach, endurance all the time, good, use that towards God. Push yourself to do a little bit further than what you would do for in service for another person. Give a little bit more tzedakah than you feel like giving. Hashem wants you to learn a certain amount of Torah or to daven a certain amount a day. Do 5 minutes more of tefillah. Add another tefillah to your day. Just add slightly. Or refining that midah could be cutting back a little bit. Keep that midah of kindness. It's a good midah, but like limited it a little bit. Refine it for God. That would be level of personality number 3. Personality number 4, tzaddikim gedolim, not necessarily a character traits that we could really tap into, but what we could do is connect ourselves to people who are higher than us. So if you know someone who is holy, holier than you, and I'm not just talking about become a chassid and write to the Rebbe. That is an important thing too. But I'm saying even just very practically, if you think that somebody is in another sphere than you, connect yourself to that person. See if you could grow a little bit towards that person. You think that they're holy, that they're kadesh. Okay, that doesn't mean that they're not within your ability to tap into. That means they're more relatable to you. So good. So connect with them, talk to them, engage with them. They might have something to contribute to you, and you, by connecting to them, might be raised to that sphere. And in the same way, if you're someone else's holy, right? Like somebody else looks up to you and they say, wow, she is holy. So you have a duty to be a leader to that person and allow them to see that being holy is not far from them, is not distant from them. They could also bring themselves up to a higher level. Now, we're not talking about to the level of Merkava, but what I am trying to say is we could use this concept of someone being on another sphere than you and you feeling like that's unattainable. And you could, I want to like break down that belief a little bit and say, it's not unattainable, right? We could always shift and break our exoskeletons to become something greater than ourselves. And if we engage with that, the more we engage with that, the more we could rise in levels of holiness. Not necessarily could we ever become a full Merkava for Hashem, but we could connect ourselves to people who are, or at least who are striving towards becoming so. So this is the end so far of how we're talking about Kavana, these 4 personality traits, and God willing, next week or in a week from, in 2 weeks, we will be moving on. Chapters 40, 41, 42. Thank you. Close this.